We are now joined by three very eminent citizens of India, people who have been very active on the ground, who are great thinkers, philosophers. They have a great pulse, finger on the pulse in India, what's going on. Today's briefing is titled Eyewitness Accounts, India's Crackdown on the Student Movement. I would like to introduce quickly, very quickly, my three panelists. We have Shabnam Hashmi, who is a veteran social activist based in New Delhi, and she has had spent more than 50 years, 40, 50 years of work in India, working with diverse stakeholders on issues, political issues, social issues, economic issues. We also have Sai Balaji with us. He's a former president of the Jawaharlal Nehru Students' Union and also a former president of the All India Students Association, which is an organization that has been extremely active in the protests that we saw headlined by the Cockroach Janata Party at Jantar Mantar in New Delhi last month. And of course, last but not least, we have Dr. Monami Basu. She's an assistant professor at Delhi University, and she has also been on the ground at Jantar Mantar. She has also a lot of wisdom to share. So let me start with you, Balaji. I would like to ask you, and take your time, take as much time as you want to answer. I would like to ask you, how do you, as a former president of All India Students Association, ISA, and very active in the student politics still, how do you see the current situation and what is ISA trying to do about it? We are seeing, the renewed attempt by the government to carry out persecution of students. We don't really know. I've been trying to, it's very difficult to get any kind of realistic information from the mainstream legacy media. So I've been trying to understand from social media, what is the status of the police cases filed? Has every student that's been arrested, that was arrested, have they been released? So can you update us on what's going on and what is ISA doing about it?
So I'll start from the last question of yours. The latest update right now is that the government has more or less released all the protesters who have been arrested in most of the states, and the government is in process of formulating a policy which we are hoping will come through the Supreme Court of India, where the Supreme Court of India is going to quash all the FIRs that have been filed between July 20th and the 25th, as per the amnesty deal that the government has assured. And we had to fight a lot for the amnesty deal to be implemented too. So I think right now at the stage where we are, the government has been forced to accept and implement its amnesty deal, and through the Supreme Court again. And the Supreme Court laid out a lot of conditions. Now the conditions have also been narrowed down, where they said the previous criminal antecedents will now be limited to the heinous of crimes, rape, murder, and I think it would be narcotics. So we are hoping that some kind of dialogue is happening between the student groups, CJP led, of course, with the government through the lawyers, where the effort is being made that the cases be quashed. And we are hopeful that the cases will be quashed. Moving backwards, what we witnessed in India in the last 2 months, starting from June 6th, we can call it unprecedented. I mean, I was not alive when the anti-emergency protests happened, but people who saw that try to link these protests to the scale of those protests that happened then. But however, what is different from this protest? What is different for this protest is two things. One, the Gen Z population that we are talking about, someone who was born between 1997 and 2012, the generation more or less makes up to a significant chunk of India's population right now. And this is a generation that has had highest access to education among all the generations in India. So the rate of education that they have, meaning people who have cleared school and who have degrees, at least the graduation, is the highest. And what is also highest among them, around 35% of this population who have a college degree are unemployed. And the rest, 65%, this data is according to CMIE, a private institution that collects data because the government does not release any labor statistics anymore. The other 65% who are in some kind of a job, their jobs are also not dignified. Their jobs are does not don't have any quality that they expected. The students who have come to protest, we can quote unquote call them as the students who have come from the aspiring class. I don't wish to call them the middle class, but I would like to call them the aspiring class, because here you have the working class population children to the upper middle class children who want to better their uh, lives, other than, I mean, compared to their mother and father or to their families. This aspiring class was promised that private education, right from schooling to right from schooling to higher education, is going to open them avenues for better livelihood. The promise was, if you get into a good medical college, you'll become a doctor. If you get into a good engineering college, you'll become an engineer, and you will have a stable job. We are not talking about students who alone have studied in a public funded university. We are talking about children or students who studied from a private university, private schools, private colleges. This was the major chunk that came out. Their anger towards the government was the promise of equity, the promise of fair chance was broken when the paper leaks happened. And when they graduated, the kind of jobs that they have been getting have not been according to the promise made by the government, by the state, or by the Modi government, because that's in power. And this is the generation that has grown under this regime, under this government. Their education, their life has been under them. And this is the generation that grew up under social media. So their understanding of the world, their understanding about how life is reflected from this aspect of social media. Just hold on. Someone is knocking my door. Just hold on.
Sure. So let me just move on to Shabnam. Shabnam, we just heard Balaji talk about how why this movement was it struck such a chord with a whole bunch of students all across from what he calls the aspiring class. And to our viewers, many of us who will be we will be sharing the video of this recording with congressional
Yeah,
staffers as we always do.
I'm back.
Balaji,
I'm
I'm
back.
just asking a follow-up
Yeah.
question with Shabnam, and we'll come back to you. Um, one of the things that is top on the mind, I have been speaking with some people, and of course, the people in America. I live in Washington, D.C., I work in Washington, D.C. I interact very closely, interface very closely with government officials, both from the executive branch and the legislative branch. And one of the things that everybody is very curious to know, what does it mean for the survival of the Modi administration, of the government? Have the protests come to a point where we might think that the administration is under threat? Or would you say, Shabnam, that the administration has weathered this storm and will continue to be in power? Because the Americans are interested in knowing who are they dealing with and what is the ground reality.
You see, I would like to begin by saying that till the student protest started and where it reached, the last 5 years as run up to this to the campaign, large part of those who have fought to safeguard democracy and secularism in India had reached a mental state where they thought that it is not happening in our lifetimes. We thought that we have lost the game, and now they won't be replaced. They won't be removed from the government. But this one protest, and before I go to talk about this one protest, I also must admit that I was personally uh, very skeptical about when it started. And I was skeptical mainly because of the leadership and the way it suddenly sprouted. And I am not so much of an eyewitness, especially in the initial part of the protest. I did go later on. And Balaji, with whom I have worked for years together, and with Isa, he called me many times, and I said that, I have my doubts, and I did not go. But the way young people responded to it, I think that was uh, beyond the control of the initial leadership. Uh, People who came there were definitely, uh, everyone was not part of the 4 or 5 people who had started it. On the ground, it was the student organized student unions, whether it was ISA or SFI or AISF, AITSO, and many others. Disha, I mean, we saw so many organizations on the ground. Um, it has generated a lot of energy, a lot of energy, a lot of hope. And what it has triggered, I mean, I was actually very surprised following the uh, closure of the movement. I mean, the day they decided that we have had a agreement with the government and it was called off. Within the next 3 or 4 days, I have seen videos of school children protesting, and across at least 5, 6 states, where they are fighting for, from we are not having the fans in our school to uh, not having enough teachers, to how a certain teacher is sexually misbehaving with the girls, and young girls and boys raising all these questions, raising slogans in the schools. So this movement is not confined to only the college going or the university going students. It has spread like wildfire across India, and I'm extremely hopeful that for the first time, I think after many years, the fear of this government, the fear of what Modi and Amit Shah can do to people, because they are highly, if you speak against them, then there would be certain reaction to that, and they are very vindictive. So that fear has suddenly gone. And one more thing which I want to add is the vibrancy of the girls. Uh, it is not that girls were more than the boys on the ground. They were must have been at least 30%, if I'm not wrong. Balaji would have better figures probably. But the way they spoke, the way they confronted, and despite the fact that police brutalized them, there were sexual assaults on girls, there was manhandling, there was all kinds of and all the videos are available and everyone can see them. The way they reacted, and there is trolling going on, they are being targeted even now. Their home addresses are being released by the Sangh gundas, but they are holding on, they are fighting back. And that is something, I think it has unleashed various energies at different levels. These are also, as Balaji said, that this is people who are now in the protest. Last 10 years, they have lived under Modi's government, and they have, apart from what has happened to them as far as education is concerned, which has already been spoken about here, the way violence against women has increased in this country. I think it is women's reaction is also to that, apart from not getting employment despite having very good education. So I think, I mean, I'm very hopeful, because
Thank
before
you.
this, it looked to me as if we won't be able to defeat this government. But now things, if this continues and spreads to different parts of India, then it will definitely bring about a change. Has the potential of doing that.
Thank you, Shabnam. And indeed, we have seen over the last several weeks, especially the last 2 weeks, what can only be described as magical videos coming out of India, how people have responded. The government, of course, the government machinery, the proxies, the legacy, mainstream news media. It appears to somebody like me who's sitting thousands of miles away from India, from whatever we can see on social media and from the legacy media, is that the government is trying their hardest to, number one, behave as if it's all in the past now, it's all over. There's no, it's now a done story and they're moving forward. And secondly, that they basically, the prime minister himself made a reel saying, I forgive these students. And there's a lot of anger about that, because people are saying, well, he should be asking for forgiveness from the students rather than saying that he forgives the students. I would like to move to Dr. Basu, Manami Basu. Uh, Dr. Basu, we are connected on Facebook. I saw a lot of the time you were there on the ground. Why don't you give us some sense of what you experienced on the ground, what you saw? You've been a very, very close observer, being an educator yourself. You have worked for years in close proximity with the young people, with the youth of the country, especially in Delhi. So, what is your assessment of what you saw and what you think uh, is the lesson to be learned from the protests?
So, am I audible?
Yes. Could you speak a little louder?
Yes. So basically, like Shabnam said, I was also a little skeptical about the protest initially, and because these days we've learned to become our generation has become had become extremely hopeless, and we have just forgotten to trust in people's movements and all, and we. So there was this I was skeptical, I'll admit. On the day there was this march to the sunset. Actually, my daughter, who's a college student, she was going there every day, and so on the day of the march to the sunset, I have a small knee injury I'm dealing with. So I get a call from my daughter, and she says, "Please don't come because you can't imagine the kind of crowd that is here." So I said, "Then I'm definitely going. I don't care about my knee." And I go there, and believe you me, I have been to as many protests as there have been people's movements on the ground. I have participated it to the best of my capacity. I have never seen crowds like the ones that I saw in Jantar Mantar. And there was this magnetism to the crowd. They were celebrating dissent, and they were calling out the administration. And this, like Shabnam said, the fear was completely gone, and the infallible image of the government, the infallible image of the prime minister, that he is God, that he cannot be criticized, they were completely dismantling that narrative. And this was just the most amazing experience of my life. And I was getting pulled back. The day I went on 20th, the march to sunset, there was this brutal lathi charge and tear gas. I escaped it by a few minutes. My daughter saw it with her own eyes. Her friend got injured. And but in the evening, we returned within 3 hours. We went back to the site, and the cockroaches were back. The place was brimming over with people in a place where there's been police brutality, lathi charge, and tear gas. Even families were walking in with their toddlers. So this, for me, the takeaway was that the fear is completely gone. The fear that we were suffering from for so many years, that we were seeing so much of injustice and not opening our mouths because we were scared of repercussions. We were scared of being called anti-nationals. We were scared of being called unpatriotic. These children did not have any of that fear. They didn't care what they were being called. And seriously, that narrative was attempted. The government did try painting a picture, or the government IT cell or people who are supporters of the government said these can't be students, these are anti-nationals. But the problem with that narrative was that almost every neighborhood had students growing from there. Even households, the parents who were supportive of the government, they had their children defying them and going to the protest. So that narrative was completely falling flat on its face, that if you have your own child, or you have your neighbor's child, or a neighboring student going to a protest, how do you call it a protest of anti-nationals, and a protest of people who are criminal, or criminalizing that dissent? It was tried, but they couldn't do it. So yeah, that was my takeaway. And I'm extremely I mean, I for the first time, let's say in more than a decade, I saw hope. I was really hopeful that what we couldn't do, these people are doing. They're asking for accountability. They're asking the government to answer questions. They're asking a prime minister who's never given a press conference to answer their questions. And I'm proud of them, is all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Basu. Balaji, what Monami has just said that gives rise to the question. I mean, of course, we all saw what great, what amazing enthusiasm there was, the multitudes there were. But the government, the media, a lot of influencers, a lot of very prominent personalities in India are objecting to the fact that the prime minister was abused, especially by women and girls. So what's going on? What is your view on that? And how do you think are the young people responding to the fact that they are being accused of having a filthy mouth, being abusive?
Well, we have to first understand what were the circumstances under which the students protested. From the time the Modi government has come to power, anyone opposing this government have been called names. They have been abused. Women have been given rape threats. Women have been given death threats. Children were not even spared. For people who spoke, their children were not even spared.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, if you can be closer to the camera,
Yeah,
please. Thank you.
from the time this government came to power, anyone who spoke against this government, they were targeted, abused, called names. If they had families, their mothers, their fathers, their children were targeted. They were called names. Rape threats to death threats to physical attacks to online intimidation, doxing, everything people face. It became a standard rule book for the government to function. And when if a protest happened, the kind of police brutality that people saw, my generation, I call myself the young millennial, we saw when the Modi government in the initial years of the student movement, right from sedition cases, even one of my friends and comrades are still in languishing in jail under UAP at the draconian laws that were used against everyone. So we all are familiar with everything. And the language that the ministers use, the language that public representatives from the BJP used, the leaders used against Muslims, against Dalits, against women, the kind of abuse they said. Never was even one person prosecuted or put in jail for that. Our own former education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, whose removal the students fought and won, called the students terrorists. And in the House of Parliament, one of the former MPs, Biduri, a reserved former MP from Delhi, he called abusive words towards a Muslim MP. Nothing happened against him. Rana Ayub, Kavita Krishnan, activist, every woman activist who stood up to the government was given rape threats, doxing happened, everything. All this formula was used on the students again, right from police brutality, doxing, threats, everything. Now, you expect a generation that is suffering the greatest inequality of the 20th and the 21st century, who don't have hope that they'll get a better job, whose access to fair system is getting curtailed by paper leaks and criminal syndicate mafia. You expect them, and this is a generation that has grown with the government throwing abuse at the people who resisted them, and you expect this generation to be courteous towards them. Well, there are a lot of debatable things about what the people said and what the people have not said. I'm not here to apologize for the people. I'm not going to apologize for what the students have said. It is not my job. It is none of anyone's job to judge them, have a moral character, or even think of apologizing. It is their anger. Why don't we understand the anger of what they said, why they said? That anger is what the government has to address. The government and the state has to be tolerant. Rather, the government and the state have been promoting people who have been attacking 15-year-old children. They have been doxing them. Young children who came to the protest with the hope that democracy is alive and they have a voice, they are being threatened today. There are troll armies, physical mobs that are thronging and baying for their blood. And the Prime Minister has the I would not, I would want to use the word audacity to come online, say, friends, I am surprised that the women of this country are abusing me. It's a cultural shock for me. It does not even talk about men. What are you trying to normalize? You're trying to normalize patriarchy. You're trying to normalize a woman has to be in the limits of the household. You're trying to be the fatherly figure no one asked you to be. You are an elected prime minister. It is because of you the crisis is today. You don't apologize for using pellet guns. You don't apologize for using brute force on students. You don't apologize for the batons with nails being punished on students. You don't apologize for barricades that had electric shock on them. You don't apologize for police officers brutally assaulting women protesters, manhandling them, grabbing their breasts, putting batons in their private parts on record, on public view. You don't apologize for that. You have not apologized. You have not even taken responsibility for shooting rubber bullets, for shooting pellet guns. and you come and say, I forgive people. No, this is not done. You don't have the right to forgive anyone. And that is what the anger of the students is. The profanity, the quote unquote profanity that people are talking about, understand the anger beneath it, understand the frustration beneath it, understand the betrayal beneath it, understand the hopelessness people feel beneath it. You go by the words, please go by the emotions that they're feeling. As a government, as a state, it is your responsibility to act so that they don't feel that anger. But your actions are always selective. You target women, you don't say anything about men, silence, fine, let's accept that for a moment. But the people who are attacking women because they use profanity in the most profane language that they're using, you don't arrest them. You don't take action against those people who are doxing women, children. You sent out your whole embedded media, which we call as Godi media, against these children. Use their photos everywhere. 15-year-old children, the photos are being made public. That girl Ruchika was forced to apologize in front of everyone. Can you think the psychological trauma that she's going through? This is part of the all playbook. There's one thing that I want to say. All the playbook that the BJP government designed in last 12 years got shattered at Jantar Mantar in last 36 days. They don't have an answer for that. They don't have a language for that. Because they don't have a language, their language of witch hunt, that language of using draconian laws is also being challenged. So they don't have an answer. So the prime minister himself is coming, but he's also being made fun of because people see through him. People see through the government. And this is a generation that has lived under the internet. I call them the Instagram generation. I mean, if you look at the generation, you have the newspaper generation, you have the television generation, you have the social media generation, which is the WhatsApp generation and the Instagram generation. This Instagram generation comes out with a clean slate. They're untouched by hate politics. They're untouched by the politics of division. And they want their agenda to be fulfilled. For that, they're willing to organize in the way they want, in the language they want. It is for everyone else to accept this generation and grow with them. Unfortunately, the government does not want to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Balaji. And this is a great way to move to Shabnam. And after I've spoken with you, Shabnam and Monami, we would like to throw this open if our audiences have any questions. Otherwise, we will continue talking more. Um, as you heard, as we heard Balaji say that the government has been tone deaf, they have not responded. They have actually gone the other way. They should be apologizing, but instead they are hounding and they are targeting the students for their protests. Do you think that there might be in future an escalation? And I would also like to hear your insight into what we have seen as a response from the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court of India, as has been reported internationally, that this whole Cockroach Janata Party came about from an off comment from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India about 2 or 3 months ago, where in a moment of anger, he referenced to some youth as cockroaches. And then, of course, Abhijit Dipke, the young person who was studying in the United States, he created this account called Cockroach Janata Party on Instagram, which quickly rose to 22 million followers. So that's what we have seen. And after the violence happened, some lawyers went to the Supreme Court and said, we would like you to take a look at the videos. And reportedly, the Chief Justice said, we don't have the time. Of course, the Chief Justice 2 or 3 days later said he was misquoted on that, and he did not say that. And even today, I was reading that the Chief Justice has apparently said that the government should be forgiving of the students, but he has not mentioned the judges. None of the judges have at all mentioned the violence that the police carried out against the students in plain sight. There are video evidence of that. What do you make all of this?
We have to see at the larger picture. Since Modi has come to power, they have very systematically dismantled all democratic structures in India. And whether it is the whole education system, they have placed vice chancellors who have associations with the RSS, who have RSS backgrounds. They have changed syllabi. They are changing everything which talks of diversity or pluralism. They are removing parts of our history. And similarly, in, uh, in other spaces, whether it is the Election Commission or the whole judiciary, there are people who have been uh, placed at various levels, and especially, I would say, at senior level also. So, this is nothing, I mean, it does not shock me, frankly, because the way we are seeing the infiltration of the right wing and the extreme right wing into all public and private spaces, this had to happen. And of course, it is very condemnable. After what had happened on on Jantar Mantar, for for the Chief Justice to say, I don't have time to watch, and without commenting on the brutalities, as you have already mentioned, and it was, you see, there have been protests and protests in this country. We have seen the farmers' protest, which was huge, which continued for 1 year, and there were also brutalities here. But to be using, uh, you know, with whatever machinery they had in their hand, which had current in it, to be using batons with nails in them, and to be sexually assaulting girls, and pellet guns and all other things. If the judiciary doesn't respond to it, then where does one go? See, 5 years ago, or I would say that even in the first 2, 3 years, 4 years of this government, one still had the confidence that if nobody is listening to us, we will go to the court. Today, if you ask me regarding any issue, I just say that no need to go to the court. Because once the court puts its stamp on something, then your political battle is also gone. And this is happening. This is not to say that the whole of judiciary has become communalized, or whole of judiciary has only the people who are associated with the government or with the right wing. There are still very strong judges in high courts, in other courts, in some of them in Supreme Court, but there is infiltration, and it is very evident that they, whatever they they respond to, is controlled by the government and by the right wing. It is very visible. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why a Supreme Court, after seeing what is happening now, everyone is on social media now. Even they might not be with their names, but their own children must be on the streets. I'm quite sure. Children, grandchildren would be on the streets protesting.
Well, we
So,
saw, yes, and we saw the daughter of a BJP Lok Sabha MP from Odisha and the daughter of
yes,
a cabinet minister of the BJP in Assam, both coming out in support of the students. And the
yes,
government or
there
the
are,
party, they have not been able to handle that. They don't know what's going on. I'm going to ask all our participants, the audience, if you have any questions, please type them so that I can ask those questions. And if you want any one of the three panelists or all of them to answer your question, please go ahead and type it. And once we have your questions, moving to you, Monami, what are you hearing from the students? Are they scared? Are they defensive? Are they worried? Are they regretting their participation in the protests? What is your sense of the mood and the emotions of the student community since you work so closely with them as their teacher?
Okay, so I'll have to give you a little bit of history on this. The thing is that Delhi University, for instance, was the laboratory for National Education Policy 2020, NEP 2020, under which admission to our university was under a centralized test called CUET, which was conducted by NTA, the National Testing Agency, which was also the testing agency which conducts the NEET exams, which is at the center of the storm. And with NEP 2020 came major reforms where students from all over India, even remote parts of the country, had to appear for a computerized test to get admission into Delhi University. And there comes the whole concept of inequality, because when you're appearing for an entrance test, which is based on the central CBSE, the central board examination, then it completely disadvantages students who are living in remote parts of the country. And so what happens is parents started spending thousands and even lakhs of rupees on tuitions for these students to clear that exam. Similarly, other exams, parents spend a lot of money. They spend about 20% of their income on tuition fees, plus tuitions, private tuitions, um, to prepare for these tests. And as a result, even today, for instance, this time in admissions, a large number of seats have gone empty because a lot of students are not able to prepare for CUET or able to make it through the examinations. There are a lot of parts of the country which are still, students don't have computer, they're not comfortable with a computer, appearing for a computerized test. They're not able to make it. So this is a public university, public funded university, a very elite university, where seats are going empty because the entire examination system was centralized, and huge changes were made in the entire pattern, the way the years of the graduate program were done, and that's another story altogether. Now, there's a lot of frustration in students because of that. Firstly, because of this whole overhaul of the education system towards something which benefits the privileged. Secondly, in our country, we have one doctor for 2,300 people, right? And the standard, even the basic standard requirement is one doctor for 270. So to have that one doctor for 270, we need around 10 lakh medical seats every year. But what we have is about 1 lakh medical seats every year, out of which 70% are in private universities. 30% of the seats are in government colleges, the rest is in private universities. The private universities charge crores of rupees. So only 1% of the Indian population can afford. So essentially, there is a reservation for upper class people in the private university, and only 30,000 seats are available for the lakhs of students who appear for this exam. And these exams are the only way for many of the people, many of the students, to climb the social ladder, climb the economic ladder, break away from their caste disprivilege and marginalization. And here you have the government taking it so callously that there have been something like 150 leaks all over the country in different examinations, including the NEET. So, of course, like Sai Balaji said, that there is a lot of anger in these students, and I've been interacting with the students, and they are feeling that they are being, they put in so much effort in terms of money. Their parents are taking loans, and this is what they get. The government is not even spending 6% of the GDP. In fact, in this last 12 years, there has only been a 7% increase, and that is not even inflation adjusted, on education. Compare it with the previous period, there was a 21% increase. So 25 government schools are closing every day. Our universities are, the quality of our universities is decreasing. The seats are going empty. The education system, the need is just a trigger. The leak was just a trigger. There is a lot of there's a lot of build up where the young people who are, aspirational, they look at Instagram, they see other countries, they see what is happening in other nations, and what they have, and what they see for themselves is a gig economy. Those are the jobs that are available in our country. Even after they do graduation, they are probably working the only jobs available are in urban company or gig workers. So my students and everybody else I've spoken to are extremely angry, frustrated, worried about their future, and they're absolutely in favor of this movement. I am yet to come across a student. I don't know. Maybe they won't say it to me if they're against the movement. But from what I can make out from my classrooms, from the students all around, they're actually coming up to me and they're wanting to discuss this movement with me. Even I don't have to raise the question in the classroom. They are asking me, ma'am, how do you feel about it? Are you with us on this? So that's the way the students are feeling, and there is this widespread, now this accountability thing has become mainstream. Jai Bhim and the calls for equality in caste, class, and religion has become mainstream, and all these things are being discussed within student groups. So this movement has been it's been tectonic, if you ask me. And I don't think, other than the students of the Akhil Bharati Vidya Parishad, which is the student wing of the BJP, other than those students, I don't think there is any other student who would be opposed to this movement, if you ask
Right.
me.
And by ABVP, this is for our American friends. ABVP is the student wing of it's a notorious student wing of the ruling BJP party in India, to which Mr. Modi belongs. It has a very checkered history and and a present. It's largely accused of carrying out a very violent, sometimes backed with violence, an agenda of Hindu nationalism and pro-government pressures in university campuses. Okay. We have two questions here quickly. One is, will it help to increase the education budget and setting up more government colleges? Whoever would like to take that question, Monami, would you like to go first with that question since you are from the academic background? Will it help to increase the education budget and setting up more government colleges?
Absolutely. That is the only way out. Instead, we are overcrowded, our rooms are overcrowded. In fact, we are going through a situation in Delhi University now where the government, the administration wants to increase the number of postgraduate seats, but there's not enough infrastructure. So the colleges are also being asked whether they want to offer, and this is all happening in the informal space. There's no written notice on it, but there are these discussions that are going on that should colleges be offering postgraduate degrees because there is not enough space in the main departmental buildings. So the solution is not to overcrowd the existing infrastructure. The solution is to build more colleges, more medical colleges, have reservations for the marginalized, the marginalized castes, have have reservations for maybe girls in the STEM. We see underrepresentation of girls. So that is that is the only solution, that you increase the budget to at least 6%. We are at 4% of the GDP right now. So yes.
Our next question is, and maybe Balaji, you might want to respond to this. What effect has the attempt, since you already talked about, I asked you about the attempt of the government to paint women, girls as vulgar. So, what effect has the attempt to paint the students as vulgar slash anti-national, etc., has the attempt had upon students and upon the general public? What has been the impact on the students? Balaji, you might want to answer that question.
Well, the Gen Z, as we call them as Gen Democracy, are not bothered about it. And you have to see there's a trend. I mean, I was sharing it a couple of days back, and there were many people who told me, young women, they start off a video saying that I'm really sorry, Modi ji, that we had to abuse you. And they would tell what abuse they did, so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so, that we are really sorry that we had to give you this abuse, and then start laughing at the end, making a point that that whole idea of an apology has turned into fun for them now. So anything that the government is trying to extract out of them, the Gen democracy or the Gen Z are turning it into another form of content, another form of entertainment, another form of resistance in the way they know towards the government. Things have not ended; they have taken a different form. People might be a bit silent, but they're finding different ways. For example, there was a video of this. I think it's called Urvashi underscore 18. There's a girl from Bombay. There were three girls who were dancing in the protest, and BJP used that reel to say this is the Gen Z we don't want, and they put another Gen Z that they want. Then she made out a video saying that your caption game is so bad. She made a video showing BJP's own reel mocking her, that how your caption game is bad, how your marketing is bad, and she made fun of it. So people are not taking it easy. They're not leaving it. They're taking it to a next level, and BJP does not know how to answer this. And to be
Balaji,
fair,
a
yeah.
question that has, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought, in this context, a question that has been asked by a lot of people in India and in the US also, and everywhere in the world, why just point at the US, is, did the organizers of the protests commit a mistake in ending it abruptly and very quickly?
Well, uh, hindsight is always a luxury that we have. But considering the situation they were there, I think it could have gone either way. I would not rather place the blame on the organizers, but rather I would place the blame on the government for failing to stick up to their word on amnesty, because the movement wasn't speak. the people got what they wanted, but the repression was happening. And I think maybe we could have waited till the amnesty was fully implemented, maybe not. It's a very difficult question to answer considering where we were and how things were moving. But one good thing that has happened, irrespective of Jantar Mantar space being ended, now there are many other places in India where the spirit of Jantar Mantar is alive. As they said, the Jan Alpha has come out. And now I think the discussion starting. I mean, the party that I belong to, CPIML, now we are making a demand for reducing the age for voting to 16 years because I think this generation has proven them well much more aware. They know how to organize themselves. They know how to ask their questions. Why should the Gen Z always be on streets to get what they want? Why can't they have the power to vote to choose the representatives that they want? Like this is the answer to the first question. They want more schools. They want more colleges. They want more public funded education. They want more jobs. Rather than coming onto the street every time, the better way is to choose the representatives that are going to make laws and policies for them. So I think the time has come where they have a rightful claim for getting the age limit to be reduced to 16 because when the information technology era started in the late 80s, Rajiv Gandhi reduced it from 21 to 18.
18.
Now I think we are in a generation where there's information access to the people and they know what they want. And rightfully from our party, CPIML, we made this demand that it has to come to 16. I think a conversation around that, considering how the voters' names are being deleted, how the Gen Z has answers to democracy, we should make them part of the democracy by giving them the right to vote.
Today is 5th of August. It was exactly 2 years ago, on 6th of August 2024, that Sheikh Hasina jumped on a helicopter and fled Dhaka and came to India. And those protests started in July of 2024. And before the protests had started in Dhaka, we had seen a universal uh, uh, presentation by commentators and experts saying, oh, Bangladesh is an economic miracle. It's a growth story. It has done so well. Its currency is doing so well. Its GDP is rising, all of that stuff. But all of that was crashed by the protests. And of course, Sheikh Hasina had to order, go ahead and do, virtually commit political suicide. But that had been the way she had run her administration, by banning opposition parties, by putting people in jail. Shabnam, I want to ask you, we have seen popular protests change governments not once, but more than once in Nepal. We saw what happened in Bangladesh. We saw what happened in Sri Lanka. The protesters entered the quote unquote palace of the Sri Lankan president, who had to flee with his family some 3 or 4 years ago. Pakistan, of course, has been a completely dysfunctional state for several years. Imran Khan, their leader, continues to be in prison. It is a security state. Everybody knows that the government won by fraudulent means. What do you think is going on in the entire subcontinent? I would like to draw on your experience and knowledge and wisdom as a political commentator for the last several decades. What do you think is going on in the subcontinent, and what lessons that might have for India?
Well, you see, one is that whatever happens in the subcontinent, if we begin from Pakistan and probably also Afghanistan, the politics is not controlled only by the national players. The politics which is played on the ground is controlled by international forces, and so is true of the other neighboring countries. Uh, in all the countries, we have seen, as you said, we have seen these protests where students and young people stormed the parliaments or palaces, etc. I don't think that we are going to face that situation. Those are very small countries, and in terms of the state power also, which is as compared to India, it's very small. India has a very strong state power. I mean, we are talking only of the military and the police force which exist across every state and central forces also. And I don't think that if we talk of the present Jantar Mantar protest, I think it was the most peaceful protest. It was the most humane protest. We saw young people clearing Jantar Mantar, cleaning it every day. These were not young people who believed in any kind of violence. The kind of violence we saw in other uh, countries around us, or the kind of violence that we saw our police using it, the young people were not part of that. In fact, constantly there were from the dais there were talks about you know, not being abusive, taking a path which is non-violent, talking of peace, talking of communal harmony, etc. So I think it was in that sense a lot more matured protest. And one of the strong reasons, according to me, was also the presence of the organized left groups on the ground, which were there in great numbers, and their supporters were there in great numbers. And not only student groups, but women groups and other, they were all there. Because of which it remained quite political and sober, I would say. Uh, I don't engage much with the international politics, but I don't think that India or these protests are going that way. We could have maybe a difference of opinion on that. The other thing which I wanted to say that in the neighboring countries, the kind of right-wing network across every single district, that does not exist there. Not the kind of RSS network that we have in India, and which is available in every single space, including the civil society. If we think that RSS is invading all spaces and has left us untouched, then we are living in a fool's paradise. There are enough people who have been infiltrated in the civil society also. This is the first time in the last 100 years that RSS has reached a position where their dream of turning this very diverse, plural, democratic country into a Hindu Rashtra is somewhere, visible, that they think that they can make it. So they are not going to let it go without a very strong fight on the ground. You were asking, what they are doing. I agree with Balaji that yes, the Gen Zs are replying to them, but there is a there's also algorithm. We get what we watch, and there is another algorithm where uh, extremely abusive material against these young women especially is being circulated on WhatsApp, on the right wing WhatsApp messages and all that, and they are consolidating their base. There is, of course, within the families, there is erosion, and younger people are revolting against the parents and all that. So I think one has to wait and see. When I say wait and see, I don't mean that just keep on waiting for what will happen. But I think it is very important that these protests by students, by trade unions, by women, by all sections, laborers, all sections of the society, farmers, they keep on protesting on, and there are thousands of issues right now in India on which protest will be happening and are happening. They're not reported at all, but there are huge farmers protests happening across many states. So I think if the opposition together is able to put its act together, if the various groups working in different segments of the society, if we continue to build this opposition and continue to struggle and have more and more protests, then by the time we reach 2029, there would be a possibility of displacing this government. I don't see them being displaced in a way things happened in Nepal and Bangladesh or others. Please.
Thank you. We have just very two quick questions. Part of these questions, sorry, go ahead, Monami, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add one thing to Shabnam's argument since you asked what's happening in the subcontinent. One of the things that is happening, and we have to look at the political economy of what's happening, is that extreme wealth inequality is happening because of neoliberal economic policies. that and we already have the data that the top 10% own 68% of the national wealth. The bottom 50% own 5% of the national wealth. So this kind of wealth inequality is unsustainable. You will have people's uprisings after some time. How long can it go on when when there is GDP growth, but there is no so to say the trickle down that all the neoliberal economists talk about is not there. So yeah, that's my additional point to Shabnam's.
Okay, so very quickly, we have 4 minutes to close out. Very quickly, the question, one of the questions is, and of course, you've partly answered all of you these questions, but one of the questions is, what do the panelists think will happen next? Shabnam, you've given your views on what you think will happen next. Where do we go from here? There seems to be a lull. Will the anger dissipate? Will Modi Shah find a way to crush the rebellion? I don't know whether it's a rebellion yet or not, but will the anger dissipate is the question. Balaji, would you like to answer that?
Well, they're dealing with a very wrong generation, and they're dealing with young people whose memories are longer than anyone else. So it's not about anger dissipation, it's about waiting for another opportunity and waiting for the moment. Right now, it has been almost 2 weeks that the removal of the Dharmendra Pradhan has
Louder,
happened,
please.
and the removal of Dharmendra Pradhan has happened, and yet the movement has not died down. It's only going to grow, and it's only going to grow to other cities, other places, rest of the country. So things are going to move in a very different direction. Rather than congregation at one place, now congregations will happen in many places. So I think what we are going to see is going to be a months-long campaign before another round of movement starts. So right now it's consolidation, consolidation, and consolidation. Organize, organize, and organize to be prepared for the for coming months.
So the very last question, how will this movement transform right-wing politics and restore the nation's secular democratic character? All of you, just quick thoughts, 30 seconds each. Shabnam?
I think it has already started dismantling it to some extent, especially using wit and creativity, which has been their major and very important tool.
Thank you. Monami?
So when finally Dharmendra Pradhan resigned, I was there at that moment, and everybody was ecstatic. And some of the slogans that were being shouted were from the stage were, "Will there be Hindu-Muslim politics anymore?" And the crowd was going, "No!" And they were saying, "Will you be distracted by Hindu-Muslim politics anymore?" And the crowd was going, "No!" So yeah, that's my testimony.
Thank you. And Balaji, and of course, before you go, Balaji, there are some people who have raised their hands. I have requested you earlier also, please type your questions here because we will not be able to put you on stack to speak. There's not enough time. So if you can, there's just 1 minute to close out. If you have a question, one-line question, can you put it out in the Q&A? Balaji, go ahead. How will this movement transform right-wing politics?
It has already transformed. They don't have an answer for the language for Gen Z, and suddenly they have realized there's a group that has to be engaged with. The prime minister and his ministers being advised to come on Instagram and make reels. RSS chief organizing a 2,000 member Gen Z meeting. These are not going to work. This is a different generation. They work with their own dynamics. They're making fun of people. They are enjoying the moment, and I mean they are like a tiger that has tasted blood. They're going for the whole prey now.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. Thank you, Shabnam, Balaji, and Monami, for your wonderful
Thank you very much.
commentary. And it makes us very hopeful. We will be sharing this recording. I'm sure we have your permission to share this recording. We have a large group of stakeholders here in the US and also outside of the US. Some of the people who joined the group of people who were in attendance on this call, they were also from outside the US and somewhere from India. And we will be sharing a readout of this with members of Congress and their legislative aides. So thank you so much and have a very good night in India and have a great day for everybody who has joined us from here in the United States. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much.